Thank you very much. Yes, TCR UK qualifying underway here at Croft. Dave Goddard's taking a well-earned break for the next 20 minutes or so, and you're in the, I'm going to say safe and capable hands of Andy McEwen and Henry Baudet. I can't speak for myself, but Henry is here to steer the ship in roughly the right direction as we talk you through qualifying for the second event of the season of TCR UK. And Henry, only a few weeks ago, we were at Brands Hatch for the season opener. 3 races on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, and so much to unpack just from those 3 races alone. What a dramatic start to the season we had.
Absolutely, and I know it's deep into the afternoon session. It feels as though the day has just started. I've just got here. Incredible. We're a couple of cars down on Brands Hatch, but a dramatic start to the campaign. Only 2 races here this weekend, but I've got to say I really like this circuit. This is a real throwback. You've got this was designed by CAD. This isn't a Tilcadrome. You don't get barriers where they are. You don't get a long back straight that sort of curves. It's very bumpy with a wall, 6 inches to your left, and then the runoff is nothing but cornfields. That's something you don't get with a modern circuit. So it's a very different set of skills and challenges for the drivers. You've got the very technical first section, and then you've got the aforementioned back straight, but then of course out the back, the Jim Clark S is one of the most formidable sets of corners in British motorsport. The section out the back, it's where you can really gain a lot of time, but of course with extra risk comes reward. Do you take that risk in qualifying with 2 races tomorrow? Well, we are looking at a 77 car going through the Mark Smith Cupra Leon. There is arguably, I would say, maybe the hero of Brands Hatch, Andy, young Jensen O'Neill going.
Yeah, absolutely so. The youngest driver ever to win in a winner TCR race anywhere in the world, we believe. Jensen O'Neill going at just 16 years old. Won the second race of the weekend at Brands Hatch. Not only that, though, he left Brands Hatch as the championship leader, would you believe? Now, part of that, I will caveat, was because it was a fairly incident-packed weekend. Race 1, most of the expected race winners and championship contenders barely made it past the halfway mark. But Jensen did. He scored points in all 3 races. He came away with the championship lead. That means that his car's carrying a little bit more weight this weekend. The compensation weights that get added and taken away from the cars based on results and championship standings. It's a fairly complicated formula as to how that all works. So his car is a bit heavier than it was at Brands Hatch, but there's also been some balance and performance tweaks which have helped the Hondas, allegedly. So he's expecting still, I'm sure, to be competitive. I spoke to Jensen this morning and he said he's not really feeling the pressure of being championship leader. Really actually seems to be taking it all in his stride. But what an impressive performance from that young man a few weeks ago.
It wasn't the results, it was the way he got those results. There were several occasions where you looked up and you winced because Jensen had his car going every angle apart from the one that you should really be going at any given point of certainly at Graham Hill Bend, several times at Brands Hatch. And yet it was not only his car control, it was the fact that he was unfazed by the CVs and the achievements of those who were battling with him, who were trying to get past. He simply, he didn't appear to be a 16-year-old at any given point of the day, or the weekend, in fact.
Indeed so. There is Jensen then, heading through Tower Bend. Drivers now just starting to get themselves up to speed in this 20-minute qualifying session. They don't have a lot of time to get the lap times in. He's got Max Hart right behind him. That, of course, was the exact situation Jensen found himself in the closing stages of that race that he won at Brands Hatch. Max Hart, the Irishman, on a welcome return to TCR UK competition this year, was hunting him down, but Jensen did not succumb to the pressure and managed to hang on to the flag. First lap times then starting to come in. Brad Hutchison is fastest on a 1:22.5, but to give you an idea, the qualifying lap record set here a year ago by Adam Shepherd, our 2025 champion, was a 22.0, so about half a second away from that, but we are immediately getting into the 1:22 bracket, so shouldn't be too much longer, I don't think, Henry, before we start seeing some seriously quick laps laid down.
Yeah, so with the weather set fair, you can see a mixture of sort of blue skies and little white fluffy clouds. ambient temperature. It is a nice warm spring afternoon, I have to say. Now here's Brad Hutchinson with Ella. That's the name of his car this year. And Hutchinson was, again, very, very impressive. He is going to be there or thereabouts every single time the lights go out.
Well, he was very happy when I spoke to him this morning. He said that's the best start we've ever had to a TCR UK Championship campaign. He arrives here 4th in points, but he's scored points. He's not on minus points, which for the last 2 years he has been, leaving the first round because of various penalties picked up. We shan't dwell on the reasons why, but he came out of it with points. He's 4th place in the standing. Jensen O'Neill going holds for what it's worth at this early stage, a 9-point lead over Callum Newsham, who we haven't really touched upon much just yet. He is 2nd in the championship. Jack Constable, not racing this weekend, was a winner at Brands, and he has 3rd position in the championship table. Hutchison, by the way, went quicker again, but that's now been beaten by Callum Newsham, who immediately blitzes the qualifying lap record, a 1:21.972. A very, very impressive lap time, that, and well, immediately going a 1/10 of a second quicker than Adam Shepherd went a year ago. That is provisional pole position for the Hyundai driver, but to do that so early in the session suggests that actually there's more speed to come.
Yes, and if you look back at Brands Hatch, then Callum Newsham was the driver most impacted, in my opinion, of all the various goings on, and you finished the weekend with the impression that all being equal, with even with success ballast, with no incidents and accidents and people stalling at the starts, clutch failures, etc., etc. That if Callum Newsham, and that was Lewis Kent getting some tyre smoke, or was that him running a little bit wide, kicking at the dust? But I'll finish my point. You get Hutchinson off as well, in the grass. You get the impression, if all goes well, Callum Newsham is the driver to beat this year. There you go, done it.
Got the points out just about, well done.
Why use 20 words when 5,000 will do, ladies and gentlemen, sorry.
In fairness, there was a lot going on over the last 30 seconds or so. Yes, Lewis Kent was kicking up the dirt at Barcroft, but that's nothing in comparison to the moment Brad Hutchison must have had coming into the complex. A 21.7 now for Callum Newsham. Every driver I've spoken to this weekend so far have said that this is the man to beat. The Elantra works well, it seems, around the Croft circuit, and Callum Newsham, we know what a talented driver Callum Newsham is. He has been a front runner in the championship for quite a long time now, 12 times a race winner, championship contender the last 2 seasons, but this his first season, full season at least, in one of the latest generation TCR cars. This Elantra is working well for him, and he at the moment has 0.3 of a second in hand over Hutchison, who unsurprisingly, Henry, has bailed for the pit lane.
Now, with those tyres being a little bit more scuffed than Hutchinson would have hoped that they would have been after that spin, do you think that is game over in terms of his chances of getting back out and improving on his time? Will he be thinking, okay, second, let the rest shoot at it, and I'll save the tyres for 2 races tomorrow? Because we haven't seen the weather forecast for tomorrow, which could be interesting.
Well, some of the drivers have seen a weather forecast, and I don't think they're going to be having much need for slick tyres tomorrow. So actually, if they've got another fresh set of tyres, might as well throw it at the car now.
It's that old, smoke them if you got them type thing. Use them now, because, as of course, it's a bank holiday weekend, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen, here in the United Kingdom, and therefore rain, I'm sure, will disrupt proceedings. Now, that is that car number 77 of Mark Smith, that Cupra Leon. Was it gunmetal grey at Brands Hatch? I'm trying to think back.
I think so.
Yeah,
yes.
it's just very striking. Now, of course, here is another. If all goes well, Carl Bordley, they've moved teams in a cart, speaked in a cart this afternoon. Andy from SVG has come across and has helped Carl Bordley. Oh my word. Carl Bordley, not only will he need Andy from SVG's help, he might need a local laundromat's help after that moment. Interesting that after Brands Hatch, I interviewed Carl after he got onto the podium in race number 3, I said, "Are you coming back?" And he said, "Well, this is supposed to be fun for me. I have to look and see if the family," because he brings his children, his wife with him, did they have fun? Did I have fun? Was it good? Obviously, it was.
Yes, he's back. Which is exactly what we want to see. Carl Bordley double former champion in TCR UK, had a year off last year. He's back very much so, but I tell you what, the back of that Honda doesn't look all that stable. In fact, all of the Hondas I've seen so far in this session, the rear end seems very skittish. Now, this is quite a bumpy circuit, Croft. They resurfaced it a number of years ago, but didn't really flatten it out at all. They just upgraded the tarmac, gave the circuit a bit more grip, but it's still very bumpy. You rely a lot on using the curbs here as well to get a good lap time, and I think these Hondas are proving to be a little bit of a handful. The best placed of the Hondas at the moment is Max Hall, 4th on the grid. Newsham at the moment has the provisional pole position. Brad Hutchison here, back out on track now, is still 2nd. Lewis Kent 3rd in the Lincoln Co. That's much more like him for the driver who had a nightmare weekend at Brands Hatch, of course involved in that start line crash in race 1, had a best finish of 10th all weekend long. Another double former champion. He lines up at the moment 3rd on the grid ahead of Max Hall, with Max Hart only 5th. So I don't think the Honda is right now the car to have.
I have to say, I mean, the rear bumper assembly of the Hondas, they look a little bit scrunched in. I think if I get through 2 races without incorrectly saying, oh, is that rear bumper of the Honda got a bit of a knock to it? No, it's just the way that it is folded in. What I did notice from Carl Bordley when we were following him around that last lap, getting to the final hairpin, you know, the left rear wheel was cocked in the air and not rotating virtually the entire way around the hairpin. So Carl Bordley certainly using a lot of setup trickery to try and get that car to rotate properly.
Which is what you want here at Croft, but it's a difficult circuit. You've got these really tight corners, quite long corners. Hawthorne that leads into that quick chicane goes on and on and on forever. You need the front end to work, but as soon as you get out of this corner, Tower, it's now foot flat to the floor, absolutely flat out, through the Jim Clark S's, through Barcroft, then you're braking into Sunny Inn on a bumpy, windy bit of racetrack, and that's where actually you need that rear stability. But if you dial in more rear stability, you lose that sharpness through the low speed stuff. It's always been a compromise circuit, Croft, and I think we are seeing a few drivers maybe just treading that balance delicately. Max Hart, by the way, has just jumped up into 3rd position. That's much more like it then for the TCR Europe front runner, who's doubling up this year, racing in Europe and in TCR UK, and his Honda, which arrived this weekend with no wrap on it at all. The team has spent the entirety of this morning wrapping the car. It is, I'm told, the same car that he raced at Brands Hatch, but they'd had the wrap taken off it. It's been put back on again, and he is now starting to go quickly. In fact, Max Hart has immediately put in a personal best first sector on the next lap, and he'll need to, because Lewis Kent has stolen that 3rd place away. Kent and Hart lining up together on the 2nd row. I'm all for that.
Yes, now you can see how hard the drivers are working. The tarmac has been improved, you said, Andy. There has been some resurfacing, but look at those old curves. This is a very weathered, bumpy old track, certainly coming down the back straight. You can see the bumps and the drivers really having to work. This, for my money, apart from, say, some of the corners out of the back of Thruxton, that is one of the hardest corners in British motorsport. That Jim Clark, Barcroft, it rewards the very brave. Like you see, there have been some huge accidents there, and drivers have to mitigate the desire for ultimate lap times with the reality of trying to fix a broken motor car if it goes wrong.
Yes, just ask Steve Laidlaw, after all, after his huge accident there a year ago. Max Hall has just gone 3rd quickest with an outright fastest final sector. Max Hart actually didn't improve in the end, nor did Callum Newsham, who just followed through the final portion of the lap, but Lewis Kent is improving, and he's heading into the final corner now, I believe, in the Lincoln Co. So Lewis Kent, 4th at the moment, needs to find 0.2 of a second to gain position, but actually 2.5 tenths would put him onto the front row of the grid, as everyone seems to have arrived down at Tower Corner together. There is Max Hart then, the O'Driscoll whiskey liveried Honda, looking resplendent in its shiny new wrap. I don't think he'll be improving this time though, Henry. Quite a bit of traffic ahead of him.
Yes, and he's catching that first bit of traffic. I think that was Russell Joyce in the 72 car at the worst possible moment. Interesting, Harry Bloor, only 10th. Honda, looking a little bit further up. Jens O'Neill going, only 7th. Honda. Max Hart, you can say he's 5th, but he is behind Maximus Hall. Obviously the best placed Honda at the moment in 3rd. But yeah, considering they are numerically superior, the Hondas, and counting nearly half the grid, the fact that not one of them is on one of them is the top 2 rows of the grid at the moment does lend to your point that the sweet spot is just a little bit tricky to find on the Honda around here than it is maybe some of the other cars.
We do always get this ebb and flow though in TCR competition where certain circuits favour certain cars, and as I said, we've had the tweaks made to the compensation weights, which will have no doubt had an effect with that as well. And so yes, the Honda's seemingly struggling, although Max Hall is third and only 4/10 off pole position. That might be about to change. In fact, it does change as Lewis Kent goes third, 27 thousandths of a second away from the front row. Brad Hutchison hasn't improved since that early flyer that he put in, that at the time was good enough for pole position, and he's now starting to look a little bit more vulnerable. Callum Newsham, though, is going quicker again. The provisional pole sitter, fastest of anybody in Sector 1 in the Elantra. Callum Newsham is on an absolute charge on this lap. He's already got pole position by just over 3/10 of a second, but he is not done there. He wants to try and find extra improvements, as does Kent, who has gone personal best in Sector 1. I'm impressed, Henry, with how many consecutive laps Kent is putting in where he keeps on finding improvements.
Yeah, I think he might have understeered a little bit out of Tower then, but again, apologies if there's a slight audio issue. Normally people don't complain when they can't hear me, but the purpose of this, then it's we get the microphone sorted. But yeah, you know, Lewis Kent, 1:22.08 now. Considering how early on in the session Callum Newsham broke the lap record, I'm surprised that not more people have not then subsequently improved on Adam Shepherd's 2025 mark, considering the track conditions traditionally improve.
Yeah, Hutchison's time is a 22.055, which is 5 thousandths off the lap record pace that had been set before this weekend. Newsham the only one to go underneath it. That previous lap for Callum didn't actually go anywhere really, but he's just on another absolute fastest first sector. So Callum Newsham continuing to push on as the session winds down now towards its conclusion. We have less than a minute to go. There's Mark Smith turning into Sunny out, making his way down towards the complex at the end of the lap. Mark Smith currently 11th position in his Cupra VZ, just ahead of Russell Joyce, who rounds out the 12 cars that have been out onto the circuit. So Newsham then at the moment looking good for pole. In fact, he's just on an outright fastest second sector. Here he comes then, Callum Newsham in towards the final corner. And is he about to move the goalposts, I wonder? He's already got more than 3/10 of a second in hand over Brad Hutchison, who has pitted. Is he going to improve this time then? Across the line he's about to go, and Callum Newsham sets a new fastest time of the session. And what an improvement, a 21.562. He's half a second up the road.
That is impressive. And who was that? Is that Carl Boardley? That's Boardley, who has obviously gone into the gravel at some point around the Clervaux Hawthorne side of the circuit. So that, I think, will probably be all she wrote, because not only has the clock struck zero, but Carl would have brought lots and lots of horrible grit and gravel and dirt onto the circuit. So that's probably all she wrote. What a performance. New lap record holder, Callum Newsham.
Well, and by half a second, Henry.
Yes,
half a second under the record.
But were we not thinking at the end of Brands Hatch qualifying, where Callum Newsham had 3 laps disallowed and yet still had the fastest first and second lap? So we're thinking, oh, it's going to be a Callum Newsham walkover. This is oh, how wrong we were. So even though Newsham is half a second up the road at the moment, that does not mean that he will have the same advantage in race trim. Of course, we have to see what Mother Nature has to say about it as well. I can't believe we got through the entire session and without hardly mentioning Ron McGovern after such an incredible debut at Brands Hatch. Anonymous here, I think it's safe to say, a 120. Let's have a look. Let's have a 123.6, just behind Alistair Kellett, who is the only addition to the field. We've lost a couple, but we've gained a Kellett.
Yes, Alistair Kellett's in the car that was being driven by Barry John McHenry at Brands Hatch. Kellett, I've seen racing very successfully in Ford Fiestas. He's a multiple former champion, I believe, in the Fiesta ST240 Championship. So a very, very quick driver in similar cars to these, front-wheel drive, 2-litre turbocharged, slick-tyred cars. And yeah, he is going to be an interesting one to watch over the weekend. So Callum Newsham breaks the qualifying lap record by half a second to take pole position provisionally here at Croft, with Brad Hutchison set to line up alongside him. And then it will be Lewis Kent and Max Hall on the second row of the grid. So, exciting stuff from TCR UK qualifying. They'll be out at around midday tomorrow for their first race. More racing though.